So this is called the assumption of homoscedasticity. That is, that means that the distribution of error error variance is the same, or it's constant across the stochastic nature of the variable that you have. So this is the assumption of homoscedasticity. If your data is having heteroscedasticity, your error distribution is uneven, and the variability of the error is, changes with the change in the stochastic variable, then you have a problem, because in that case your predictions are going to shoot in one direction or the other, and it may not be very reliable. It's kind of overestimation of error, beta that you will get in that case. So as a good econometrician, especially in financial data, if you are handling sensitive data you are handling, it's very important that you check for this assumption of error distribution. It's very important. So what is the error? So error is basically the difference between the actual and the estimated. So when we put cap over there, it's called the estimated value. So y minus y estimated. So y minus y estimated. What is the actual and what is the estimated value after the regression? So if you deduct them, y minus y calculation. If you do the calculation y minus y estimation, this is going to give you the error. Now, the sum total of error, sigma error, means the sum total of y minus y estimated. So when you actually pull them together and add up the error altogether, that is called the sigma error, right? It's the sum total of the error. Now, the problem with the sum total of the error is that, it will always be equal to 0. If you calculate the sum total of error, sigma e will always be equal to 0, because one of the property of regression is that it passes through the mean. And if you deduct or deviate the actual series with estimated values, the total sum is always going to be equal to 0. So in regression, we do not actually try and minimize the sum total of error. What we minimize is called the sum total of square of the error. So in order to avoid this problem, because it doesn't make any sense to minimize the sigma e, because it will always be equal to 0. So we do y minus y estimation square sigma, and then we try to minimize this. That is the process on which the whole regression equation is based. We call it OLS. OLS means ordinary least square estimation. And the ordinary least square estimation, we call it least square. A square, the word is used here. So a square means this, squaring of the error. And least means we are trying to minimize the square of the error. And that's why the process is called OLS, the ordinary least square, and which is based on the property called BLUE, B-L-U-E. So BLUE is called the best estimator, linear estimator, and the best and linear estimator, unbiased estimator, B-L-U-E. So best, linear, and unbiased estimator. So these are the properties of this estimation, and that's why we use OLS. The process is based on the minimization process, which we use in calculus. So those who understand mathematics will understand this. But if you're not able to understand mathematics, you don't know calculus, is fine. Just overlook this whole formulation which I have written over here. It doesn't make much difference on your understanding, right? But those who understand calculus will understand this. So this is partial differentiation with respect to beta 0, that means slope. And the second one is the partial differentiation of the whole equation with respect to, the partial differentiation with respect to the slope, the second one. And the first one is with respect to the intercept. So beta 0 and beta 1. And we put it equal to 0, that is the first order conditions of minimization. So if you try and do this, you will get the two linear equation in front of you, normal equation, we call it normal equation. And then with the help of those normal equations, theoretically, we calculate regression equation. But in statistical package, we don't have to do anything of this sort. They automatically will calculate everything for us. So you don't have to understand how it is calculated and all kind of things. But if you have a special interest, you can go to book Damodar Gujarati and study over there how the process is calculated. So if you talk about the calculation of error in our case here, in this equation that we have estimated, where the y was the time and the x is the diameter. So we have taken this equation. So y is equal to y is the actual y, is has to be deducted from the estimated equation. Estimated equation was beta 0 minus beta 1 x. So here in our case, the error is going to be equal to time minus 5.845 plus 0.142 diameter, because this is the figure which we have got from the estimated figure. So likewise, if we have to calculate the error, we have to write, let's say time. I'm also writing down because I have to use it in the equation in calculation. So then we have to do minus 0.142 diameter. So that's the estimation we have to use for calculating the error. So let us calculate the error by going to the data. So we go to transform variables. So I'm using another new tab. So you can keep watch on this how I'm going to do that. So I'm going into transform, and then we'll say compute variable, and then I'm saying I'm calculating manually, and then say okay, you report this as error. So the name of the target variable should be error, and what is the argument that I'm building here? Error is equal to time. Time means I'm going to take time from here, that is the actual time, right? And then I'm saying minus. So I have to take minus from here, minus 5.845. This has been taken from the estimation. And then again, I have to put minus. Then I'm saying 0.142, and then multiplied by diameter. So for multiplication, I'm using the star. So multiplication by diameter. So I'm taking diameter from here. So this is the argument I'm building. So if I do this, this means I'm calculating y minus y estimated, right? So, and this is the concept of error. So I'm calculating error. So I'm asking the computer to give me the result in the name of the variable error, and then calculate as per the argument which I have built over there. And then I'm saying, okay. And when I'm going to the data set and try to see how the calculation has been done, you can see there is one variable already added over here, is called error, right? So error is already calculated over here. So now I have to analyze and check what is the nature of this error. But in order to tell you, you don't have to always go and keep or construct the argument to calculate the error. But I did that because I wanted you to understand the concept of error. But the statistical package itself will calculate the error automatically. So for example, we go to regression, we go to error, right? We go to regression, reset, and then I'm saying, okay, the regression is about time, is about diameter. Then I'm saying going to save button. And in save button, you can see here, there is the column called residuals. And residuals there are unstandardized residuals, there are standardized residuals. We understand it very well that we have to calculate the unstandardized residuals because we are not calculating the residuals based on standardized data, right? So, and then we say continue, I will say okay. And if you go to the data again, you will see that residual has been calculated over here. So did I do some mistake? Because our manual calculation is very different. Let me just go back to the output. Probably I made some mistake in putting in the values. So the first regression equation, this was the first regression equation. Okay, so I put the wrong values actually. So I have taken it from some other regression equation. So it has to be equal to time minus 1.955. Then it has to be minus 3.457 diameter. So let me calculate it once again for you. So this is the error calculated by the computer. So I'm going to now calculate it manually once again. So here our mistake was that time minus 1.955, and this will be 3.457 nanometers. So probably then I'm saying, okay, give me in the form of E. Let's see, the expression is incomplete.
So that you have inserted 0.34 instead of 3.4.
Oh, okay. Let me do it again. So time minus 1.955, again minus 3.457. Then we say multiplied. Let me see if it works. It did. Oh, so there is some more mistake. So I'll have to again go back and check the equation.
It will be plus, not minus.
Oh, plus. It will be plus. Yeah, you're right. You got the right thing. Yeah, it will be plus, not minus. Yeah. So let me go to. This will be plus. Yeah. This argument is going to be plus. The rest is fine.
Sir, I think that will be minus and.
No, it will be plus because the intercept value is in minus. So y minus the intercept value. So minus minus, it will be plus. So let me see if it works. Change the existing variable. Okay. Yeah. So now if you see, we got the same value: 12.6, 12.6. 16.69, 16.69, 29.6, 29.6. So this is manually calculated, and this is calculated by the package. So this is how the error is calculated. Now let's treat the error. So let's have a look at the error, how the distribution of the error is. So we go to chart builder, go to scatter diagram, and trying to create one diagram out of it. So let's say we take error, unstandardized error over here, and across the the variable that we have on the x side, that is, you can plot it against the x or against the y as well. So let's say diameter. So let me see what it says. So what it says is that the distribution of error across the variable is very uneven, right? So you can see here in the beginning, the spread is this much. And as we increase further, the spread actually increases, right? That's what it is saying. The spread is now very big. So if you have to draw a line from here, so this line will go down, down, down. And if I have to take line this here, this side, in order to cover the entire thing, the line will go like this. So there is a divergence. There is a divergence. So as we move forward, the spread of the distribution actually becomes larger and larger and larger. So it actually has the problem of problem of heteroscedasticity. So error distribution is not similar. So now question is that, how does it affect the regression? It will affect the regression because the regression is going to be the estimation of the regression is going to be overshoot, and it will be unrealistic. and therefore we have to control for, because of the fact that the data is not normally distributed. There are some odd figures available here in the data, right? So something of this sort. So one of the way that we can look at whether there is a problem in the data or not. So if suppose we go to regression, diameter and time, and then we say, okay, plot. We say, okay, fine, you plot histogram or the normal probability. And then we say, okay, jet data, jet residual. You look at the jet residual on the distribution, and then say, okay. And then we'll say, okay, save these two values, which is called the Mahalanobis and Cook's distance figure. And then we'll say, okay. So we take a look at the standardized residuals, and then we found that the normality, if you use the JED, is going to be pretty okay, and even the PP plot is somewhat divergent, but not very much divergent. So any Z score transformation is required for this data, and the standardized residuals are going to behave properly in comparison to any other residuals, normal residuals. And then we have the two statistics calculated: Mahalanobis distance and the Cook's distance. And if we try and plot these two distance on a chart plotter, then it will give you some idea about which are the data point which is problematic. So we take, let's say, Mahalanobis here and the Cook distance here, and then say, okay. We see that all the data set is hovering around in this range, but there is one single data set over here which is not very aligned with the other. So maybe it is an outlier which is present over here. So go to the case. So we try and go to the case and see which data is behaving like this. It's possible to check for this data. So I will have to see how to find out this data. So there is a process. I'm not able to figure it out just right now, but there is a process, and you can do that. You can check this data, or one of the way is that you have to transform this data and then you work on this data, right? So something of this sort. So you have to go back to the specification. So there may be some specification error. So a specification error is about the variable that you have included in your model, which may be problematic. So you'll have to go back and check the model itself, how you frame that model. That's number one. Second is you look at the data and then see if there is any outlier. So in this case, it is very much clear that it's not the model specification which is wrong, but it is the data set which we'll have to look at. So, there is only one single outlier over here. If you try and treat that or transform this data, if you want to keep those that outlier, then we can transform the data and work on it. Another way is to leave it just like that, because there is not too many dispersion in the data. So data is properly, more or less nicely behaving. So, even if you go ahead with this regression, is fine. So that is the point in hand. So these are some complicated decisions, and it actually depends on case-to-case situation. So what kind of problem you have at hand, and what is the objective that you have set for yourself, what kind of data you are handling, what is the behavior of the data, and things like that. So it is contextual, but it's not a bad idea to take a look at the error distribution and check your data and do something about it, right? So as a next thing, let me see what we are going to do as a next thing. Okay, so as a next thing, we are going to some kind of, other form of regression, which we may like to explore. So I'm going to give you work on another set of data. We'll have to import this data from the table. So I think we have already imported that data. Okay, so we already have this data with us. So let's work on this data now. So is there anything that you want to ask at this point of time before we move on to another set of data?
Sir,
Hmm.
sir, can you show about scale ratio scale? That is when the data type is in ratio nature.
I didn't get your point.
And there is nominal, interval, nominal, ordinal, scale, but ratio.
Oh, ratio is part of scale. Scale, there are 2-3 types of scale data that you get. So ratio is also called scale data. So it's the same treatment you do with the ratio data. It's
So
called ratio scale.
Example.
Example. I don't know. Maybe rainfall data, which is or stock market data. These are all the ratio data.
Okay, sir.
But ratio is a part of scale data. Scale data is of 2-3 types, right? So one of the type is scale ratio scale. We call it ratio scale. So if it is a ratio scale, then the treatment will be the same as we do with the quantitative, any quantitative data. I don't know. Maybe probably I'm not able to understand what you are trying to know. So maybe you can discuss it sometime, right? So I'll find out more and get back to you. If you can give me your mobile number, I can get back to you. But this is exactly what I can say you at this point of time, because ratio data, they are the scale data itself. So we don't call it ratio data, we call it ratio scale data. So the treatment will be the same as we do it with general quantitative data. That's what I can say you at this point of time. But if I can find out something more, I can discuss with you. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So moving ahead with this data. So first try and understand this data. This data is about different forms.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. Can I ask you one question?
Yeah, sure. Please.
Sir, actually, what you have explained, that when we normalize the data and perform this regression, the value which we get of beta coefficient is a standardized beta, right?
Okay.
So that is the standardized beta value which we will get if we perform regression on normalized data. Am I correct?
Not normalized data, Z score. So converting the data into Z score, and then if you perform the regression, you will get a standardized score.
So is there any difference? I mean, is there any difference? Because normal distribution is calculation of Z score only, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, so that is the point. I showed you also that Z score distribution is a perfect normal distribution. And when do we do that? We do that because we have the requirement, like if there is too much of spread in the data, and data is, you're not able to get the normal distribution or even close to normal distribution, then it is advisable that you either convert it into logarithmic data, log conversion, or you do a Z conversion.
Right.
So Z conversion is useful when you have multiple regression, you're dealing with multiple regression and with the kind of different variables in different scales. So it makes more sense to convert into Z score. But if you have a data like income data, growth data, sales data, something where the data actually improves over time or moves in certain directions, if this kind of data is there with you, then it is advisable that you convert them into log scale, log data, rather than the Z score data. So these are some of the transformation of data which is required in order to handle the regression in case your data is not behaving well. So when we say data is not behaving well, that means it's deviating too much from the normality.
Right, sir. Okay, so thank you.
Okay. So here we have the data for different companies, the second column is about the impression retained by the consumer for the advertisement that they have made. For example, Pepsi has made an advertisement and the question was asked to customers, can you recall Pepsi ad? And the customer said, yes, I know Pepsi ad. So the customer was asked, can you recall the ad? Then the customer recalled the ad. And those who are able to recall certain proportion of the ad, so the data is about that. So, the purpose of this data is that the more the retention of the ad by the consumer, by the customer, this means that the customer is attached to that product and is likely to buy it, right? So, it's a kind of shadow or the pseudo replication of the sales data. So this means the underlying assumption we are looking at is that the more the retention, the higher the sale. So IMP data is in fact representing the sales in the indirect way or effectiveness of the advertisement data. So something of this sort. And then the last column is about expenditure on advertisement by these companies. So these are the expenditures made. So this is the data taken from Wall Street Journal. This is actual data, but it's slightly old data, but it has been taken from the Wall Street Journal. So there are two questions that we need to ask as a manager who are dealing with this data or this market. So if you are launching some new product, the company is interested in knowing whether it makes any sense to advertise or put money in advertisement. That's one question that we need to answer. Second question that the company is looking forward to is that if we have to put some money budget on advertisement, then how much money we should actually keep aside for the next financial year for the advertisement. That's what the company would like to know. Now, if you want to answer these two questions, then the first question can be answered by using simple regression. Because here, if the simple regression gives us the positive beta value, this means the regression line will be upward sloping in the linear way. So this means if we increase the expenditure, the impression is likely to increase. And so it makes sense that we increase expenditure on advertisement. So the first question can be solved by using simple regression. But the second question cannot be solved by using simple regression because it says that, or it's asking is that what is the turning point in expenditure you're looking at? This means that, does it mean that, if you keep on increasing the expenditure, the advertisement retention will keep on increasing? Is that so? I mean, theoretically, it is not possible that you keep on increasing advertisement expenditure and this will keep on increasing the sale for all time to come. There will be some tipping point which will come at some point of time where you have to either change your advertisement or you have to do something else, or you have to bring in new advertisement. Then only the sale will be affected. So the company is interested in knowing whether there is a turning point and what is that turning point. So this is a problem, two problems at our hand. So the question is that what kind of regression equation that we should fit into this data. So first we are going to, let's say, graph. Try to understand just try to understand the nature of this data, or this will also give us a lot of indication of how which kind of graph that we should use. So I'm taking the expenditure on one side, impression on other side, and then I'm also going into point ID. So I'm saying, okay, also give me some point ID label by giving the name of the firm over there, so that it makes easier for me to understand the data. So I'm going to the output table, and here is the output in front of us. So beautiful, you see. So expenditure on one side, impression on other side, and you can see different companies how they are performing. And we find that this scatter dot if suppose we talk about the advertisement efficacy of McDonald's. So we find that the McDonald's is spending a lot of money on advertisement, much higher than Pepsi. But the impression retention of Pepsi ad is much higher than the McDonald's. So it makes me very clear that the effectiveness of McDonald's advertisement is not as high as Pepsi's. But if you compare Pepsi with Coke, we find that Coke is spending less than Pepsi. And the difference between the advertisement retention of Pepsi and Coke is too big. So that means even if you compare Pepsi and Coke, though Coke is spending less than Pepsi, Pepsi is higher in expenditure, but their retention of ad is very high. Burger King is not very efficient because it's ending up spending even slightly higher than Pepsi, but its advertisement retention is far less than Coke. So something of this sort. Ford is very inefficient because their ad is not very efficient. So something of this sort. But if you look at the nature of this data, then you will see that, if you draw a straight line here, just a free line, if you want to draw a free line over here, how this free line will look like. The free line will look like something will go from here, it will go straight, touch here, but a lot of dots like Ford, Pepsi will be far away from this line. So what it says is that the straight line may not be a very good fit for this data. We can make out from this scatter dot. And in order to find out the turning point, we can also see that this graph may go like this, and there is some kind of turning point here because Pepsi represents the highest peak of retention, and then there is a fall. So we can expect that there is some kind of curve which actually captures the growth and then the peak and then the falling down. So what kind of equation that can actually tell us of this sort. So I'm giving you that equation is called the quadratic equation. So this is also regression, but it's a quadratic equation. So the equation looks like this. So beta 0, then beta 1 x, and then you multiply x with x. That means you're finding out x square. So beta 2 x square, you are adding one more variable here. So x square becomes the rate of growth. It represents the rate of growth, and plus e. So you have the beta x, which actually going to give you the linear regression trend to begin with, and then x square is going to give you the turning point. So the turning point, we all know that in quadratic equation, the turning point, the upper turning point occurs when the coefficient beta 2 will be negative, and then the upper turning point will be visible. And if the beta 2 produces a coefficient which is positive, this means there is a lower turning point. So the curve may be U-shaped or curve may be inverted U-shaped. So what we are expecting here is that we want to have a curve which is inverted U-shaped, not the U-shaped curve. So we are looking for upper turning point. So we go back and try and calculate the result from this data. So let me see. We go to analyze. So in order to find out the simple regression, we need to actually calculate one more variable, which is going to be x square variable. So which one is the square? The impression and expenditure. So expenditure is our independent variable. So we go to transform, we're going to compute variable, and then we'll say, oh, give me exp square, and then calculate exp square as expenditure multiplied by expenditure. So give me expenditure square. So if I go to data set, the expenditure square is calculated. So we go to analyze, go to
Sorry,
regression.
sir, excuse me.
Yeah.
Instead of multiplication, you have subtracted, sir. That's why it is 0.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh God. Sorry. Okay. Well, my spec and this small font is creating a lot of problem. So compute. Oh, you're right. Now this is okay. It looks like okay. Let's say okay. So we come back here, expenditure square. So analyze regression, we go to linear. So what is the dependent variable we are looking at? We are looking at IMP and independent variables. There are two, right? So we are not interested in much, but we are just interested in looking at the result. So if you look at this result, so we have the two coefficient now, unstandardized beta, two coefficients. We have the equation like 7.059 plus 1.085 minus 0.004. So I have noted it down over here. So you can see this. So quadratic equation turns out to be 7.059 plus 1.085 expenditure minus 0.004 expenditure square. So if you look at this beta 1 coefficient, it's plus. This means it is giving us a upper, or is a moving upward trend between expenditure and impression. That means it makes sense to spend money on advertisement. Second one, we have to calculate. So we need to calculate from this beta 2, and apparently beta 2 coefficient is minus. This means it's going to give us upper turning point. So here I'm using calculus. I'm finding out DIMP divided DAEXP. So that means we're differentiating this equation with respect to expenditure. So when we differentiate, we get this equation and we put it equal to 0 as the first order conditions. So we get expenditure, which is equal to 135.625 in the calculations. Those who understands calculation will understand this very well. Those who do not understand calculation, I'll show you some different calculations which you can actually understand very well. So this shows that mathematically calculating from this equation, 135 is the turning point. So this means at 135 around expenditure, that is the maximum expenditure that one should plan for putting in advertisement. Otherwise, beyond that, it doesn't make much sense because the impression is not likely to increase after that. This can also be achieved by going to curve estimation. So when we go to the curve estimation, instead of calculating directly the regression, so it's asking which is your dependent variable. So we'll say IMP, which is your independent variable. I'll say EXP, and then it's asking include constant in equation. I said yes. Plot the model, yes. Do I need linear equation? Yes. Do I need quadratic? Yes. So I've checked quadratic. There are many forms of the regression that you can actually calculate by using this window. So like growth, logarithmic, cubic, exponential, inverse. So all these, equations have different properties and they serve different purposes. So I'm just giving you an example of how quadratic serves the purpose, a certain purpose. So we said, okay. And what it gives us is very interesting. It gives us the graph. It also gives us the estimation. So model summary, if you look at here, the parameter estimations. So if you look at the linear estimation, it is giving us 22.163, and the beta 1 is 0.3663. And in quadratic, there are two equations, two coefficients. So your constant is 7.059, which we got earlier. Then beta 1 is 1.085, which is positive. We got it earlier. And beta 2 was minus 0.004. This is also what we got earlier, right? So the estimation is the same. And here, if you look at the graph, the quadratic graph is actually moving up, reaching the peak, and then, it is coming down. So it's actually showing the upper turning point, right? So by using quadratic here, in this case, we got the upper turning point. But if you take the cost data, let's say any company's cost data, and try to fit the quadratic equation, then you will get a lower turning point, because the behavior of cost is such that actually the average cost, not the total cost, the average cost will keep on declining, and then it will reach the bottom at some point of time, and then it will start increasing. When the firm actually enters the third stage of production, the cost actually average costs start climbing. So if you really want to discern that particular phenomenon with the cost data, you can use quadratic equation over there. So there are many applications for that. But if you look at graphically, the highest point is this one, and if you draw a parallel down there, it will come something like 135 on the x-axis. So graphically also it is possible to find out what is the turning point. So this is one application of how we can actually use the quadratic I have given to you. Now there is one more application I will talk, and then I'll move to multiple regression. So the next application I'm going to talk is about the logarithmic application, right?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah. Sure.
Sir, you manually calculated the threshold value of the expenditure. How we can get it from that curve output?
Curve you have to
I mean,
guess.
or we are supposed to calculate manually only the threshold expenditure that you have shown.
Both are correct. Both are correct. But the point is, if you calculate manually by using the calculus, it gives you the exact figure, right? But here you can also get exact, but not mathematically exact. So what you do is that you draw a tangent over here. So the tangent is going to touch somewhere at the peak, right? And then you draw a parallel line from there and make it touch the x-axis. So in x-axis, if you have the accurately, if you have written the values over there, then you will get the exact value on the x-axis. That's the only way to find it out, by using the curve.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let me go to another application. Are you interested in these kind of applications? I'll give you one more if you want.
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, okay, fine. So what I'm doing is that I'm going to open another set of data for you. Let's deal with different kind of data.
Excuse me, sir. In the meantime, Surajit sir also wants to ask one question.
Yeah,
He has, yes, he has posted this question in the chat box, that which model is best fit and how to assess it.
Okay,
Surajit sir, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So that's a good question. That's a good question. I'll discuss that question. How to select a model, right? So what I'm doing is that I'm taking some data from sheet number 3, and I know which range of the data I have to import. So, but you will have to first note down the range which you want to import. But I have already noted it down. That's why I'm writing it here from sheet number 3. So the data I have is this one. This is the data of the year. This is the data of the consumption of cup of coffee. And this is the data of the price per cup in dollar. So this is also taken from one of the research, paper, this data. So this is the actual data. So I have not imported the variable name in this one, because the variable name was very complicated. It was written in a very big way, the big one. So now I'm putting the variable name over here. Yeah, what is this saying? Year, then cup consumed, coffee consumption, and then price. Average cup of coffee consumed. Average price of coffee per cup. All right, so this is the data with us. Now here the problem is we want to predict the sale of coffee and also find out the relationship between price and consumption. Right, so we go to analyze. There are two ways to do it. One is we go to analyze regression, we go to linear regression. It's very simple regression that we want to calculate. So consumption of coffee depends on its price. So it's a very simple demand relationship that we look for, and we say okay. So what it says is that the average price per cup of coffee, that is beta 0, is minus 0.425, and the constant, that is beta 0, is 2.610, and beta 1 is minus 0.425. So that's what, and regression is is in order, so we can use it. So this is a regression equation we can actually plot and say, okay, fine, we got something like consumption of coffee is equal to 2.610 minus 0.425. The interpretation would be that almost like less than half, the price of coffee is actually going to change the consumption by less than half a coffee. That means if you increase the price by $1 per coffee, it is going to affect the consumption by almost like half of the cup, something of this sort, we can presume. But if we try and estimate the logarithmic equation by converting it into log, so we'll say, okay, log coffee consumption, and we go for the finding out where the log conversion will be. We generally take the natural log with the E-base logarithm. So it's asking which variable you want to convert into log. We say, okay, cup consumption, please convert into log. So it has converted one into logs. We'll also have to convert the other one. So instead of cup consumption, we say, okay, price, convert this, log price. Okay, so let's say, okay, fine. So let me see if this has been done nicely. Yes, so you have the log conversion in front of you, and then you go to regression linear. It's a very simple way to do it. Resetting the data. So consumption depends on the price and logarithmic data. So here we have this calculations in front of you. So you have the equation like y is equal to, or consumption is equal to 0.768 minus 0.228. So the relationship between price and consumption is the same, that is minus. So it affects adversely. So, but the interpretation will change. Here the interpretation of 0.228 is that is like if price is changed by 10%, then the price is changed by 10%, then the consumption is going to reduced by 2.28%. If the price is changed by 100%, then the consumption is going to be reduced by 22.8%, because you have taken the logarithmic scale on both sides. So interpretations will different. So when you are using the simple regression, the interpretation will be in terms of absolute quantity. So almost like half a cup will reduce. But here we cannot say that quarter a cup will reduce. It's not like that. It has to be interpreted in terms of percentage, right? Because the 0.228 is almost like a it's acting like a is acting like a proportion of change in consumption with respect to the proportionate change in price. So that's what it represents. So when we are saying proportionate change, a percentage change in consumption with respect to the percentage change in price, that means there is a concept called elasticity concept. It's a very useful concept, and it actually measures the elasticity. So I'll just give you some idea about what I'm talking about, because it's very important idea of research. So you should look at this. So this is in terms of the previous data in which the expenditure elasticity was calculated. So this calculation is based on that, not the cup data which we have used just now. So in double log, the impression is a function of advertisement expenditure, and impression is a kind of non-linear formulation. That is, beta 0 expenditure is to the minus beta 1. And if you take log on both sides, in order to convert it into double log linear curve, then you have the log impression is equal to beta 0 minus beta 1 log expenditure. So this becomes the double log function. So this kind of formulation can be said like the non-linear curve after taking log on both sides have been converted into a log linear curve. So something of this sort. So what is the basic the characteristics of this kind of formulations? So here the slope, that is beta 1, it represents the elasticity, that is the proportionate change in the dependent variable with respect to proportionate change in the independent variable. That's what it tells us. And conventionally, how we calculate this proportionate change is that we take the slope, that is, slope is represented by when we differentiate one variable with the other variable. The first differentiation is called the slope, and multiply it with the point on the demand curve. So point is, we take the ratio of the two variables. So that's how the elasticity is calculated. And if we try and find out this, if we take the differentiation of the entire equations, then second step is we differentiate beta 0 expenditure is about minus 1, that is the original equation, with respect to expenditure, and multiplied by the point. So when we differentiate, we get this. Those who understand calculus will understand this formulation, multiplied by the point. And then again, we simplify this. So this becomes the next expression, and we multiply it with the point. So it becomes minus 1, minus 1. And then we calculate next simplification is this, and then it is equal to, IMP by IMP, because both are the same. IMP is denominator, and this expression is equal to IMP. And then this gets cancelled, and we are left with minus beta 1. So this means that, even if you're not understanding the whole process, we started with the elasticity concept like this, and we ended up, it is equal to beta 1, right? So this means the whole process tells us that the elasticity is equal to beta 1. So this means the slope becomes the elasticity, right? So if the slope becomes the elasticity, this means that you can interpret it only in terms of percentage. And it's a very useful concept, because if you're estimating the linear line, the slope is not the elasticity, because the elasticity is a combination of two things. One, the slope of the curve, and the point of the curve, point on the curve. So in the simple linear regression, you have the slope, and then you need to multiply it with the point in order to get the elasticity, right? But in double log, you don't have to do that, because the whole process tells us, calculations tells us that, the elasticity is the slope itself. And that's why it is also called constant elasticity curve. The non-linear curves are called constant elasticity curve. That means you move to any point on the curve, the elasticity remains the same. But in the linear curve, it is not so. In the linear curve, the moment you change the point on the linear curve, your elasticity changes. And therefore, you see the upper segment of the curve will have higher elasticity, lower segment of the curve will have lower elasticity. And if you take a line pass through the 45-degree, cutting across the linear curve, which is joining the y and x axis, you will find that the elasticity is equal to 0 at that point of time. So these are the properties which are very important properties of the equation. And this is the calculation which you can see result. Log impression is equal to 1.300 plus 0.613 log expenditure. That means in the previous data, when the double log was fitted, this is the result you got, which says that the expenditure elasticity is about 60%, 61%. So this means that if you change your advertisement expenditure in any way by 100% or 10%, this is the proportion in which your impression is likely to change. And this is useful because it can be used for prediction purposes. So prediction can be done by using straight away the regression equation. Prediction can also be done by using elasticity. So, this is the beauty of the calculation based on elasticity. Any question?
Sir, so if we run the regression on return line, a return data set, stock return or any index return, so for that also the interpretation will be in point only or in percentage on return data?
On return data. So on return data, it will depend upon which equation are you fitting. If you are fitting the linear line, it will not be in terms of percentage. But if you are fitting the double log, on both sides you're taking log and then you estimate the equation, then it will be interpreted in percentage.
So one question from my side. When again the same line, when we calculate the first of the stock return or the index return, sometimes the returns are negative. And when we want to normalize the data on negative data, generally we are not able to calculate the logs. In that case, what we can do, sir?
The entire series is going to be negative, or some of the data
like so yesterday's price was let's say 100 rupees, today's price is 98 rupees, so there is a negative return that we can say. Okay. And in the time series data, generally we found most of the stock returns data are positive, negative, both the ways. And if we want to take a log, because to normalize the data, definitely we have to take a natural log or normal log. So generally on zero or negative data, we are not able to calculate the log. In that case, what we can do, sir?
So if there are only few observations, then you can go ahead with the log. It doesn't matter because you have a long series and only couple of data are turning into zero. So that should not be a big problem, right? But if you have most of the data in negative, then it is not suggested to go for the log calculations.
So in that case, what we can do to normalize?
Simple regression.
Simple regression we can do. Yeah. Because I was reading some of the literature few times before that. If you want to convert a negative data to calculate the log, first of all we convert the data, like transform from negative to positive. Transformation of data with the highest negative value.
Okay.
Let the highest negative value in all the data. So we're transferring all the data into the same way, in the same formation, and after we can calculate the log. So is it feasible?
Neutralize the
yes.
And then you can go for the modulus and then calculate. Anyway,
yes.
I mean, these are some of the ways. So I don't know. I mean, research is very vast, and people people have different views.
Because in some of my research, because I am mostly doing the research on the stock market returns and that part only. And I faced lots of problems when I want to calculate the regression.
I understand that, Kapilji. So, go by what the other experts are saying. No problem.
At that time, that will be termed as opportunity loss. Because if you deduct every amount from the highest amount, the nature will be changed, the nature of the data.
Yeah, so you can use it as one of the limitation or assumption on which your entire calculation is based. So that's all. As a researcher, you can do this at best. There is nothing called all-round acceptable research. Even if you do the best of your tools you use, somebody will say and point out, oh, you have not done this one. It's fine.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
research is not about
even
that.
this thing I was faced at my PhD also.
Yeah. So research is not about doing everything which is needed to be done. Research is about doing things which you think is important in the context you are working. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So let's move forward. So I'm going to take you now to a kind of slightly big data, bigger one. So I'm opening the car sale data. So if you see this, it's a massive data in front of you. This is also the actual car market data. Slightly outdated, but yes, it's very good data for understanding regressions and all. So you have the manufacturers, car manufacturers, and then you have the different models in front of you, the car models, and then it has got the sales data, it has got resale value of the car, then different types of car. So there are two types mentioned over here. One is the car that is automobile and other is truck segment. Then you have the prices, then data on the engine size, horsepower, wheelbase, width, length, curb weight, fuel capacity, fuel efficiency, that is MPG, and the log sale. Log sale was used later by this data, so no, log sale. Anyway, so MPG. So first we'll try and understand this car market. So let me first take you through something very interesting is called the correlation analysis. This is one thing that we all look forward to. So, and I'm picking up two variables to make you understand the correlation analysis. One is I'm taking the sales data, and other I'm taking the fuel efficiency. So how fuel efficiency and sales are correlated? Are they correlated or they are not correlated? So this means that these days, with the per capita income going up in the economy, we find that people are looking for environmental friendly, fuel efficient car and something of this sort. So price, the importance of price in the Indian market is now slightly going down. And if you look at the Western market from where the data has been picked up, the importance of price is almost vanished actually. So people are looking for very different kind of variables for buying the car. It's more related to lifestyle. It's more related to environmental consciousness and things like that. There was a very famous article which was published in the journal, and the title of the article was, "Why do you drive BMW anyway?" And the consumers were asked these questions. What are the factors behind, why are you picking up BMW to drive? And most of them actually conferred that they're driving BMW not because of any other reason, but it's very, very environmental friendly. So, the consumption pattern is changing with the rise in income. So it makes sense. Let's have a look at how sales and fuel efficiency are related. So when I run this correlation between the two, this is the result I got. So can you interpret this result? Anybody from your side? So the correlation that we got is minus 0.017, and then the p-value is 0.837. So what is the interpretation?
Sir, there is almost no correlation.
There is no correlation, yeah. In fact, negative correlation, yeah. But the significance, it's an insignificant correlation.
Not significant, insignificant.
Non-significant, yes. So we are accepting the null hypothesis that the correlation is equal to 0, right? And we have got the minus correlation. So how come? Is this the reality? There must be something going on here in the data. So what we do is that we start looking at the data now. Is there something wrong with the data? or do we need to do something? What is the nature of this data? So we take let's say sales. Where is the sale? Sales. We take sales, and then we go for fuel efficiency. On the other hand, I'm also putting a point ID so that we can know which car it talks about. So we'll say, okay, put the model over here and say, okay. So this is a market we are talking about. This is the market in front of us. So what we found is that there are two cars, that is F series and the Metro. These two are quite out of order in comparison to the rest of the market. You can see that. We call them outliers. These are called the outliers. So they bring in a lot of variability in the data if there is outlier available. So what do we do with the outlier? The best thing we can do is to remove them. The first thing we should do is to remove them, if it is possible to remove the outliers. But here, as a researcher, what we find is that the F series, though it is very low on efficiency, is able to sell the highest in the market. It's a very highly sellable car in the market, though it is very low on efficiency. While Metro, on the other hand, it is very high on efficiency. It's one of the best car in the market as far as environment is concerned and fuel efficiency is concerned, but it's not able to sell much in the market, right? So, if I have to model my car for this kind of market, I will say that, okay, I would like to keep the F series in the data set. I don't want to remove F series. I want to look at it, but I want to remove Metro from my data, right? So I'm building the first argument. So we are going to, let's say, data. This also for you to know a little more features of SPSS. So I'm going to the data and I'm saying select cases. So here is a button called select cases. So this is the argument that I have to build here. So I've said if conditions is satisfied. So I have clicked that, and then I said, let's build the condition. So I'm said select the cases if the model is not equal to Metro. So I want to remove Metro from my data, right? So I'm building this argument. I'm saying if model is not equal to Metro, and you have to put Metro in one single quote. If you don't put it under single quote, it don't take. Not equal to Metro. So this is the argument I have built and said, okay. And now I'm going to the data set to have a look at how it affected the data. Let me just scroll it down a little bit for you. So you can see here, you can see this data, Chevrolet, Metro, and it has been crossed, right? Can you see this? Crossed, 27th entry has been crossed. So this means now if you do some analysis out of this data, it will do the analysis except the Metro. So Metro will be deducted from the analysis. So what I have done, I have removed one outlier and I have kept the F series into the data itself. So I'm going to correlation now. Has it changed my correlation? So that's what I have to see. So I'm resetting the data. I'm taking sales. Then I'm going to fuel efficiency. And I'm saying, okay, so let me see the correlation. Well, has it changed the correlation? Anyway, it has changed the correlation, but the result is still insignificant, right? And it is still minus. But the only thing it has done is that the earlier correlation was like minus 0.017. Now it is 0.002. So there is a bit of improvement, but it's insignificant. It is still insignificant. So maybe because the other outlier also needs to be removed. then only the result will come about. But I don't want to remove the other outlier. I want to keep it in the data itself. So what should I do? I should actually convert the data into log so that the variability goes down. Is that what I'm going to do? So I'm going to actually convert the data into log. So we go to transform, log sale, and then I'm saying, okay, so sales data has been converted into log, and now we have the log sale data in front of us, right? If you want, we can also convert the other variable also into log in order to get a better result. But let's see how it works. So we go to correlation, bivariate, log sales, well, the correlation has improved. Now it has come to positive, isn't it? 1.36, but it is still insignificant. So p-value is still not less than 0.05. So, I mean, this gives us the confirmation. Well, we also need to convert the other variable into log. So other variable was fuel efficiency. So let me try and see that. Now we find out the correlation. So log sales versus log fuel efficiency, and say, okay. Interesting. 0.123, and now it has further improved, but still it is not giving us the desired result. So this means either we stop here and we say, fine, so there is no correlation between fuel efficiency and the purchase. But in the second look, when we looked at the data, we found that there is one more problem in the data. So I'm doing it stepwise so that you can understand the problem we are talking about. So there is one more problem in the data. The problem is that automobile section has been combined with the truck section, and the people who purchases the truck and the people who purchases the automobile usable car for the household, there is going to be two different behavior. So what I'm doing is that I'm going to data and I'm going to split the file, and I'm asking the computer to calculate correlations separately for these two categories of data. And then I'm saying, okay, organize the group output by the group, and the group is vehicle type. So when you give me the output, you give me output separately for the vehicle type, and there are two vehicle types that has been inserted in this model, in this data. So now I'm going to analyze, going to correlate, going to bivariate, resetting it, again taking these two, log one, and asking the computer to give me the result. So here you see, this is the automobile sections, vehicle type automobile. Here you see the correlation is 0.470 and significant, 0.000. And then if you look at the truck section, in the truck section, the correlation is 0.230, and which is insignificant. This means now this is the right picture, because it says that when you buy as an individual consumer for your household use, you buy automobile, you care for environment or you care for efficiency, but the truck drivers or the other segment is not that much caring for this. And the market is sharply divided So in order to grasp the idea of how market is sharply divided, we go back to again we go back to the making this chart, and then we are going to actually go for the stacking of the variable, right? In this exercise, what we are doing is that we are saying that, okay, based on the vehicle side, vehicle type, stack the variable and give us some idea about how they look like. And then we'll say, okay. Oh, because the data is now split, so it's not, so we'll have to go back again, normalize the data in order to find a split. So I'm just going back to normalizing the data. Even the select cases, I'm saying select all cases. Then now I'm going to go to the chart builder. Reset. Stack the variable. So stacking of the data based on vehicle type. Okay. And if you look at this stacking, the two colors are stacked on two different sides, right? So it's not giving you the better view. Let me create a better view for you. So I'm taking this fuel efficiency here. Sales this side. So it's giving you some kind of, nice idea about how the stacking has taken place. So one is blue, another is green. And you can see the greens are on one side, the blues are on the other side. If you take this log data, this will again give you a much better idea. So log sales and log fuel efficiency. Yeah, so this gives us a much better idea about how the stacking has taken place. So greens are on this one side, the blues are on the one side. The market is actually divided very sharply, and therefore when we combine the two data and try and calculate the correlation, it didn't work out well. And that's why we have to split the market, and then only we can understand the correlation. Is that clear? Okay. I'm now going to give you some idea about, when we are talking about the correlation, I'm going to give you some idea about the one more correlation, which is quite useful, and you can have a look at that. This data is about health funding. So, there's a lot of health funding that has happened by the government, and these are the reported disease, right? Health centers funding and the disease, reported disease. And these are the number of visits that people are making in those infirmaries. So when we calculate the correlation between healthcare funding and the reported disease, we find that there is a very high correlation between them. And there was a reporter who made a news out of it, and she created a program wherein she showed this correlation and said, look what is happening in the market. Government is giving lots of funding. Where is the funding going? There is a high correlation between The government funding and the disease is on the rise. So they are positively correlated. Government should stop funding. Government must stop funding because it's not allowing the diseases to go down. It's actually increasing the disease. Right? So this is what the correlation says. So what is the position over here? Can anyone respond on that? What is wrong with this correlation? Dr. Dipti, any idea? What is wrong with this correlation?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. Anyway, so the basis is that they're saying that, okay, when I look at the government funding and the number of disease, they are highly correlated. So this means the government funding is going somewhere else and people are not being treated. So that's the news, right? Now, we go to correlation, not the bivariate. Now we are going to the partial correlation. Okay. Now we are calculating a partial correlation. So what we are saying is that we're taking the health funding, we are taking the reported disease as the variable, and then we are saying that, okay, control for visit of healthcare, visit of people, visit to healthcare facilities. That means over time, there is one more variable which was overlooked by this journalist, and that variable was the healthcare, facilities being used by the people. Earlier, when the funding was less number of people were visiting the infirmary. Now, when the funding is more, the infrastructure is created more, the more doctors are coming, so more people are visiting in the infirmary. So larger the number of people visiting, the number of reported disease will go up. So when you're talking about number of disease, it has to be vis-a-vis the number of people who are visiting, right? And that was the problem in reporting of this correlation by the journalist, right? So you have to look at the partial correlation, controlling for the visit, not the absolute correlation between the two. And when this partial correlation was calculated, it was found insignificant, right? So how the use of correlation can distort the result, this is an example of that. Anyway, so I thought I should share this example with you. Let's go back to the car sale. So now what I'm doing is that I'm going to go to analyze. We're going to regression, going to linear, and I'm saying, okay, sales in 1,000 is a function of price, engine size, horsepower, wheelbase, width, length, curve, fuel capacity, fuel efficiency. So I'm taking all these factors as determinants of the sales of car sales, right? So this is what I'm trying to do over here. So you say I'm building a multiple regression model. Is that clear? And then we say, okay, so let's go back to the output. So here, the model summary, we find that R square is 0.314. So it's a weak model. It's not a very good fit. It's not a very highly fit model, right? But it's usable because ANOVA turns out to be significant. So we are done with that. And then when we look at the coefficient, then we find that the price in 1,000, if you look at the significance written over here, of all the variables which have been reported. So how many of these you find that they are actually significant? Not all of them are significant. So which are the one which is significant? Do you think that the price is significant in purchase? Any answer?
No, sir. It is
No.
not significant.
Yeah, absolutely. Price is not
Price
significant.
with land.
Engine
Price
size?
with land is significant.
Yeah, okay. Engine size, yes. Horsepower, yes. Wheelbase, yes.
Yes.
Width, no.
No.
No. Length? No.
No.
Curve weight? Yes. Fuel capacity? No. Fuel efficiency? No. You see, many variables have turned to be insignificant here. And what is significant is engine size, horsepower, wheelbase, and curve weight. This means the market suggests that it is not about price, it's not about efficiency. What is being sold in the market is big and sturdy car. So if the car is big and if the car is solid, sturdy, they are more likely to be sold, right? That's what the market says. So, it's a very unusual kind of result that we have in front of us. And when we look at the market in actuality as a researcher, we don't see that, this is happening in the market. That means there is something wrong with the calculations, right, with the data. So what we do is that we go to analyze, we go to regression, linear again, and there is a button over here, you can see method. And then when we click this button, you have a different kind of calculations given over here. So it's stepwise, backward calculation, forward calculation. So we go to stepwise regression. So what we are doing here is that now we are converting this regression calculation into stepwise regression. So stepwise regression process is such that, it creates or builds argument or it on the basis of iterations. So it picks up the best variable and then you will iterate once again, and then again pick up the best variable, iterate again, and it will keep on iterating till the time you get the most significant variable left in the model. And whatever number of iteration it does, the last iteration is your final result. So that's what how it looks like. So we say okay and see the result. So here in the model summary, you can see there are two models it has calculated. So it has done two iteration. So our concern is the second iteration. The first iteration, you can see obviously the R square is 0.13 and it has improved to 0.247. So obviously the model is not that strong, but the second iteration, the R square has improved. ANOVA, in both cases, the first iteration was also significant. The second iteration was also significant. If you look at the coefficient in the second iteration, the first iteration, it has picked up the wheelbase. And in the second iteration, it has added price into it. So this means wheelbase and the price, these are the two very significant or most significant variable, and rest of them are not so much significant, significantly affecting the sales or purchase of the vehicle. And these two are very significant. This means that the conclusion is that it is the cheaper car and a bigger car which the consumers are looking for. So they are looking for both the values. They're looking for bigger car. They're also looking for cheaper car. The earlier conclusion was that people are looking for bigger and sturdy car, which was a wrong conclusion. But now this is the right conclusion, that people are looking for cheaper and bigger car, right? And the next table is about the excluded variables. So this gives you the basis for how the exclusion has been done. So the exclusion is done on the basis of the partial correlation. So you can see that, the highest partial correlation in the first iteration was that of price in 1000, and therefore price was excluded from the iteration, the second iteration. So in the second iteration, you don't have the price. And in the second iteration, you can see the highest was engine size. Highest partial correlation was engine size. So engine size was picked up. This is a collinearity diagnostic that is called the tolerance level. So about the tolerance level, the interpretation is that, the tolerance has to be, more it is nearer to 1, the better it is, right? So if you look at the price one, so partial correlation is also one of the highest, all the partial correlation, and the tolerance is almost like equal to 1. So 0.988. This means that about, if you look at the partial correlation, so about 36-37% of the explanation of sale which comes from price is very different or exclusively coming from price. It's not being overlapped by any other factors. So that means in an environment which is free of collinearity of all the independent variables related to each other, price is independent of all the variables, not affected by any other variable, is able to explain about 37% of the sales. That means it is the most significant one in a non-collinear environment. So that's the reason why wheelbase and the prices have been picked up, because these are the two which actually have separate independent, and rest of them are actually correlated with each other, and they are highly correlated. Highly correlated means that the same explanation of sale which comes from a particular variable, part of its explanation is also coming from the other variable on the right hand side. That means the same explanation is actually done by two and more variables. So it's a kind of inflated explanation that you get, and any beta that you get out of collinear situation is an inflated beta. That means the beta is affected or explained twice or explained thrice by the 2-3 variables. The same explanation has come from 2-3 variables, which is not the assumption of regression. The assumption of regression is that, so once the variable is explained by the independent variable, the different variables which is on the right hand side should not actually be correlating with each other. They should be independent, and they should be independently explaining the dependent variable. So the explanation which is coming from price should not also be coming from engine size, should not also be coming from horsepower. So no, this should be independent of each other. So that's how it works, right? So this is the multiple correlation, right? Any question on this? If you want to know a little more on the diagnostics, then you can also do like this. You go to linear, and then you go to statistics, and here you can check this collinearity diagnostics. So then you do OK, and when you start looking at the collinearity diagnostics, so here you get all these collinearity diagnostics. So it will give you the condition index. It will give you the variance proportions that is coming from different variables, and then if you look at this table, the exclusion of the variable is done on the basis of partial correlation, the tolerance, and the variance inflated factor, VIF. So any variance inflated factor which is more than 2 is serious. It's a serious case of collinearity. And the tolerance value, which is almost nearing 1, is a better value. Lower the tolerance value is not a very good one. So this means if you have a lower tolerance value, this means the same explanation is coming from other variable as well. But if you have a high tolerance value which is equal to or almost like 1, 1 is a perfect one. If tolerance value is 1, this means that the 100% explanation is coming from the same variable. It is not interfering into any other variable. So that means it's very, very independent. So these are the collinearity diagnosis. So many variables with lower tolerance value and higher VIF value, variance inflated value, is an indicator of multicollinearity. One of the simplest way of calculating the multicollinearity is to calculate the correlation of all the variables with each other. Like you can go to correlation, reset it, and then take all the independent variables and find the correlation among each other. It's going to be a huge big table, but this is one way you can look at the collinearity. So when you have this correlation matrix in front of you, then you see how many of them are significantly correlated or highly significantly correlated. If you have many variables which are highly significantly correlated, you have a serious problem of collinearity, right? And here we see that if you look at the diagonal elements, it's almost all of them are highly correlated, right? So this is another way to look at whether the collinearity problem exists or not exists. If there is a collinearity problem, then what to do? Stepwise regression. So you follow the iteration process, and then it actually automatically removes the collinearity, and it gives you the model which is free from the problem of collinearity. So that's how it works, right? Is that okay, Dr. Deepti? If there is any question, otherwise we can wind up this session and go for lunch.
Yes, yes, sir. Participants, do you all have any questions? I guess, sir, no queries right now. So as you say, sir, we will take a lunch break and we will get back at 2:30.
Yeah, fine. Okay, absolutely.
Okay, okay. So participants, if you people are not having any query regarding this session, then we are taking a break for 1 hour as a lunch break, and we'll be right back at 2:30 sharp. Is that fine with you, sir?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.